Kashmir is off the table. It's been resolved. It's over. So that message should have gone home to Pakistan. कि अब रहने दो है, बहुत हो गया, But Pakistan will continue to persist and not getting anything. Are you getting Kashmir by saying it 10 times?
They're going to make us look bad.
How?
Nobody
cares.
No political leader has completed his term for the last 20-25 years. So.
See, that's again a misnomer. 2018 elections, which brought Imran Khan into power, were heavily rigged in favor of Imran Khan.
But I feel so if the army has a good conditioning from the grassroots level, even they can be good for a nation in order to control it. Do you agree, sir?
It's very difficult because the army is not trained for governance. So the army is black and white. Whereas in politics, everything is grey. Now they are slowly hinting that you let China deploy its own security forces.
China is infamous for its debt trap. Do you think they do something similar with Pakistan?
They already have done it. The Chinese banks are making a noise. Who had lent the money. Projects were actually conceived in such a manner that the rate of return is about 22-23%. So the electricity being produced is so expensive that people cannot afford to buy. It is beyond Pakistan's capacity to repay. So what do? Trade will shrink. And the prices then will go up even more.
Then there will be civil unrest?
Yeah, there will be civil unrest.
And then, sir? Today we have a distinguished guest, Mr. Tilak Devasher, a renowned expert in Pakistan and a current member of the Indian National Security Advisory Board. Mr. Devasher's deep insight stem not just from his academic pursuit, but also from a personal connection to the region. In today's discussion, Mr. Devasher will take us through the complex landscape of Pakistan's political dynamics, its military role in governance, and the nation's evolving international relationships. We'll explore why Pakistan's political parties struggle for strength, how its army influences governance, and the shifting perception of India within Pakistan. We'll also delve into the significant implications of Pakistan's relationship with global powers like China and the United States, especially in the light of recent geopolitical developments. Mr. Devasher will share his perspective on the economic challenges Pakistan faces, from the China-Pakistan economic corridor to the broader issues of trade imbalance and education reforms needed for a sustainable future. Join us as we unravel the intricate fabric of Pakistan's internal and external affairs, understand the profound challenges it faces today, and hear Mr. Devasher's vision for the region's path forward. It's a conversation packed with insights from decades of observation and analysis. So without further ado, let's get started. Before we dive into today's conversation, I just wanted to take a quick moment. We looked at our analytics and noticed that 93% of you who watch our videos regularly aren't subscribed yet. If you're enjoying our content and want us to keep going with more insightful conversation, we'd really appreciate if you could take just a second to subscribe. It might seem like a small action, but it goes a long way in helping us grow and bringing even more amazing content your way. Thanks for your support. It means the world to us. Now let's get back to the video. Tilak sir, welcome to Diary for Publisher.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
An honor to have you with us, sir. Been a long time coming. Excited for this conversation.
Thank you.
You are an expert of Pakistan being in India, sir. I would first like to understand from you your connection to Pakistan.
My father was in the Air Force, right? He started his career in the Royal Indian Air Force. And as children, he used to tell us stories about two officers who later on joined the Pakistan Air Force and who were his flight commanders in the Second World War, flying Spitfires over Burma and later after the war in India. And he was based out of Chittagong. And he would then, go on sorties against the Japanese forces. Mm-hmm. So he told us stories about these two Pakistani Air Force officers, who by that time one had just finished his tenure as chief of the Pakistan Army, Pakistan Air Force.
Wow.
And the second one, Noor Khan, was the chief during the 65 war. So as children, naturally, you're interested in war stories and what your father had done. So my interest got kindled then. And then in the 65 war, the 71 war, heightened my interest. Mm-hmm. In college and university, I studied the freedom struggle, partition of India. So in a sense that I got really interested in Pakistan because of that.
So all these wars that you were listening about when you were young is what you got interested in.
And the background of my father's stories about these two Pakistan Air Force officers who had been his flight commanders.
But studying Pakistan on another level that you understand them as well, sir. But there has to be more significance to the connect with
Yeah,
Pakistan.
so then during my career also studied Pakistan to some respect, but I really took off after my superannuation. After I retired, then I read much more on Pakistan. I really read a lot on Pakistan. One thing that struck me was that most of the attention in India gets focused on Indo-Pak relations or infiltration or terrorism,
Or Kashmir.
on Kashmir, nuclear issue. Very few people pay attention to what is happening inside Pakistan. What is its economic development? What are its parameters? What is the water situation like? What are the internal political dynamics? So I decided to study Pakistan focused on the internal issues rather than the from the Indo-Pak perspective. So all my books, if you see, are based on an understanding and the study of what is happening inside Pakistan. So, for example, my first book, Pakistan, Quoting the Abyss, I coined an acronym WEEP, which looks at water, education, economy, and population. Now, these are not, shall we say, sexy subjects. Nobody studies them in detail. I went into a lot of depth.
Right.
You know, I studied the issue of madrasas, the issue of ideologies. I studied the Pakistan movement and talked about it, that whether Pakistan's problems are current or they're carrying the baggage of the Pakistan movement.
True.
I did all that, and there was a lot of appreciation because very few people are actually doing Pakistan studies in India. My second book was on Pakistan leadership,
Okay.
from Jinnah to Nawaz Sharif and Musharraf. I have to add another chapter on Imran Khan, as and when it happens. And my third book was on Balochistan, largest province in Pakistan, but probably a very troublesome problem. And my last book was on the Pashtuns, on both sides of the Durand line, in Pakistan and in Afghanistan. So focus has been basically on the internal dynamics.
Done, sir. So today's conversation, we'll try to understand more about the internal situation. But before that, since you are unable to travel to Pakistan as an Indian citizen, what is your source of information to understand Pakistan deeper? There could be some books, there could be some newspapers that you are reading on a daily basis.
Yeah, I think luckily today, because of social media, you have access to a lot of information. A lot of primary material is also available on the internet. For example, the budgets, the economic surveys, the State Bank of Pakistan reports, reports of the IMF and the Asian Development Bank and the World Bank. All these are available. Manifestos of political parties, before the election, they tell you what their program is. So a lot of material is available. It's not that material is not there. This argument that because you can't go to a country, वहाँ भी लोग जाते हैं for how long?
A week.
Short term. So everybody's on best behavior who you meet. Either you go and stay there.
True.
2 years, 3 years. Then you can learn about it. Otherwise, there is so much of primary material and people have written about it. People have written some excellent books, including Pakistani authors. And if you go historically, there are a lot of, especially during the Pakistan movement, a lot of British writings on the subject of that era.
Are there any particular author or diplomat that you like to listen to from Pakistan, sir? Who speaks a lot of sense, according to you, in Pakistan?
Well, there are a lot. I mean, I wouldn't like to name anyone specifically. But today, especially because of the podcasts and less of television shows, but because of podcasts, there are some people who make a lot of sense.
I see.
There are think tanks who come out with very good reports, especially on issues like water and in education, on development, deprivation in Balochistan, for example. So very good material is there.
I see. So Pakistan seems to be turmoil when you look from the outside. So at the moment, they're in a financial crisis. There's a lot of debt from the IMF and other countries that they sponsors them. There is political problems as well. Correct me if I'm wrong, sir. I see a problem of leadership there at the moment. Leadership because the military has too much power and the political system doesn't have as much power as it should be in terms to run a country. If you would like to put more light on it, sir.
Yeah, so let's start with your last point about the military having too much of power and the political leadership. The army dominates. Nobody disputes that. But why does it dominate? And I think the fault also lies with the political leadership. Right from the 50s, if you look at it historically, Ayub Khan became army chief, commander-in-chief, and then he should have retired after 3 years. But he was given 2 extensions. Then he was also made the defense minister as a serving army officer. He was made defense minister sitting in the cabinet. And it was his good friend, I forget the name of the first, the Governor General after Jinnah. When he imposed martial law, within 2 days Ayub Khan removed him They said, martial law, I am the guy who has the power. And thereafter, the political parties have not been strong enough, to have internal democracy, to have internal voting. If you see all the political parties, there's one leader and he has followers. There's no democracy. Whether it was a Bhutto, whether it is Imran Khan
now.
Whether it's Nawaz Sharif or Shehbaz Sharif. Unless and until the political parties are strong themselves and political parties are united, the parties that are out of power will be the ones shouting democracy the most and army interference. But peeche se they will go and tell the army, ki hame bana do, we'll do a better job. So the army is playing off one political party, one politician against the other.
I see.
Musharraf writes in his book that when he was a co-commander and then later army chief, politicians will be coming to him all the time. Ki sir, hame bana do, hame ye kar do. Please mediate in the dispute between these two politicians. So human nature is such, the army will say, fine, then let me rule myself. You guys are not able to manage. So that's the reason why the army dominates.
No political leader has completed his term for the last 20-25 years. So
see, that's again a misnomer. In a democracy, it is if assembly is elected for 5 years, prime ministers can be 3 also. It depends on the system. If the political party, he loses confidence, he is removed and somebody else comes.
Right.
It is not necessary that one prime minister has to complete 5 years. Where is it? In the UK, for example, you find that in between the Conservatives or the Labour, the leaders are always getting replaced.
True.
That is not a benchmark, whether there is democracy or not. The benchmark is how independent they are in formulating policies, in formulating budgets, in allocating budgets to where they are required, rather than to defence expenditure.
Yeah.
That is the level, that is the benchmark for independence of the political government. The army takes away a big chunk and nobody and this has been happening since 1947. Civilian governments have prioritized a huge chunk of the budget to the army because, Pakistan is in danger. India is out to undo Pakistan or Islam is in danger. तो उसके बहाने पे
So their objective is to counter India basically with
the objective
with the
is
budget.
to continue to have resources so that they can rule the roost. That is the objective of every army chief.
I see.
He will not accept any reduction in force levels. He will not accept reduction in budgets. Keep the army happy, they keep needing new toys. कभी ये ले लो, कभी F-16 ले लो, कभी J-17 ले लो, कभी ये, So that's how the army keeps us happy, for which you require money.
But are they needed of this of
that is a different question. No civilian government. See, normally what happens is that the budgets are debated in the finance ministry or in parliamentary committees.
Like a democratic place.
Pakistan mein no such debates take place. Whatever the army says, and what the army did when they found the budget was increasing a lot, so all the expenditure on pensions, for example, was taken away from the defense budget and parked on the civilian side. So automatically the budget didn't look too big because in any force, you will find the pensions take away a lot of money. So the army pensions today, including Air Force and Navy, those pensions are now parked in a civil budget, not in the defense budget, to make the budget look healthier.
I see. So you're saying to improve a situation in Pakistan, it is important to transfer the power from the military to the civilian and political system.
Military will never hand over power willingly. The politicians themselves have to become stronger politically in their own parties, will have to come together and not keep running to the military, keep hame power pe laga do, and dismiss that government and all that.
Do you think that's possible?
No, because the politicians are so sort of power hungry. And you see, democracy hasn't taken roots in Pakistan in the sense, let's say for example in India. Pakistan projects that because elections have taken place, it's a democracy. It's not so, there's much more to democracy than just holding elections. And elections also which are rigged, which don't really reflect the will of the people. 2018 elections which brought Imran Khan into power were heavily rigged in favor of Imran Khan. Elections held in February this year were again rigged to make sure that Imran Khan loses and the PMLN government comes into power. And people know this. So if they don't have faith in the elections, what kind of a democracy is it? So as soon as the elections are over, the person who has lost will start agitating.
Okay.
Throwing doubts on the credibility of the elections.
Right.
So the best term in Pakistan is hybrid democracy. It's not a real democracy, but where the army is calling the shots from the back. As it is, the army, the foreign policy, the security policy, the defense policy, All this is in the hands of the army, not the civilian government. The civilian government is told to economy, you look after the economy. But now even the economy, the army's got a foot in the door. They have a thing called the SIFC, Special Investment Facilitation Council, where the army chief is present. And he is running around to different countries seeking loans for the economy. It's not his job. But he is doing that. So gradually creeping, the greater control of the army in areas which are even civilian.
But I feel so if the army has a good conditioning from the grassroots level, even they can be good for a nation in order to control it. Do you agree, sir?
It's very difficult because the army is not trained for governance. In the academies, in the training institutions, in the staff colleges, they're not trained for governance. They're trained for war fighting, they're trained for doctrine.
True.
They're not trained for even counterinsurgency. But governance, especially in the South Asian context, which is such a complex thing dealing with the people.
True.
So the army is black and white. Whereas in politics, everything is grey. Ye bhi ho sakta hai, wo bhi ho sakta hai.
Well said.
So the army is not, so it's not trained. It's the disciplined force. It can get things done. But how to get them done, what needs to be done, how do you deal with people? How do you deal with special interest groups? How do you balance special interest groups for the benefit of the country? Army is not trained. If it was a battle, if it was a fighting, certainly.
Right.
They're trained for it.
Right. So do you have an idea of how Pakistanis perceive us, sir, as a large community? How they perceive Indians, sir?
See, there's been a big change over the last 70 years. Initially in the 60s, under Ayub Khan, Pakistan was doing better economically.
Yes.
And they would always say ki India gareeb hai, there's so much of poverty in India, look at us. Nobody in Pakistan starves, there are no beggars and all.
They had a better growth rate than us, sir,
Yeah.
at one point in time.
They had a better growth rate than us. Due to mismanagement, due to military rule, due to army interference and politicians not really having that vision and the leadership qualities. Today, they're in awe. They're in envy.
Yeah.
Okay, look at India, economy is the 5th largest in the world, the way they are progressing. They've reached the moon. They've,
Diplomacy is high.
everywhere, that they get called, they are members of BRICS. They have strategic autonomy, buying oil from Russia. They're buying things from the US. Everybody's coming to India, G20, and all those kinds. So there's a huge feeling of awe and envy at what India has done. And then the question comes, where have we gone wrong? And I think they now realize that they've lost the race. You see, one of the biggest motivators of Pakistan since 47 was the issue of parity.
Okay.
At parity with India. Philosophical reason for that was that they felt that they had ruled over India for 800 years and therefore they deserved to be equal, if not better, treated than India. But after the 70s and 80s and 90s, that is gone. So parity is no longer, they know that they are nowhere near comparing themselves or being treated on par with India. People still have ambitions for that, but they know it's a lost battle. So that is how the Pakistanis have come to see India from what they saw India in the 60s.
S.J. Shankar visited Pakistan recently, sir.
Who?
S.J. Shankar, our foreign minister.
Yeah. Dr. Jaishankar. Yeah.
Dr. Jaishankar visited Pakistan for a meeting with the
SCO meeting.
SCO meeting, sir. Do you think that was a good move?
Yeah, because the multilateral forum. The fact that the multilateral forum meeting was being held in Pakistan does not detract from the fact that it is actually a multilateral meeting. And why should not India put across his point of view in a multilateral forum, just because it is in Pakistan? So I think he made it very clear that he is going not for a bilateral visit, but for a multilateral visit. And he was well received and he made his point, whatever he had to say, and came back. So it was a good thing to have gone.
Security was a major concern at the SCO because of the protests for Imran Khan, but it was settled at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And what kind of message did we give at BRICS by letting them know, drawing a red line that, we can't have everyone in BRICS, pointing at Pakistan mostly?
Also Turkey. Yeah, we also. I think that's a calculated move. You see, because wherever Pakistan is in the same forum as in India, Pakistan will always raise the Kashmir issue, a bilateral issue. In SAARC also the same thing happened.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to raise bilateral issues. But SAARC has come to a grinding halt because of this Pakistan, that wherever it goes, it feels, you see now in the UN is a big India bashing for Pakistan. This time in the UNGA, in September, 193 countries spoke Except for Pakistan, no one spoke on Kashmir. No one, including Turkey. So that message should have gone home to Pakistan. कि अब रहने दो है, बहुत हो गया, you know. But Pakistan will continue to persist. I've never figured out what do they achieve. They have a position on Kashmir. Everybody knows the position on Kashmir. By saying it again and again at every forum, you vitiate the atmosphere of that forum and not getting anything. Are you getting Kashmir by saying it 10 times?
They're going to make us look bad.
How?
That's the...
Nobody cares. Everybody shuts off as soon as Pakistan starts talking about Kashmir. You know, everybody's attitude is just forget it. You know, because I think Dr. Shankar has made it very clear, Kashmir is off the table. You know, it's been resolved. It's over. What is not over is the part which is under illegal occupation of Pakistan.
The terrorism part of it as well.
No, but in terms of, I'm talking about territory, in terms of Kashmir. That is the Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, you know, which is Muzaffarabad, Kotli, Bagh, and Gilgit-Baltistan. These, which were part of the princely state of Kashmir in 1947 and are today under illegal occupation of Pakistan, are what is on the table for discussion. Kashmir, Jammu and Srinagar, they are off the table. The world also accepts this, especially after the developments of 5th August 2019. Nobody is looking at that Kashmir. So Pakistan is, you know, trying itself hoarse for no reason. Nobody is interested.
Do you think there can ever be ties, improvement in ties between us and Pakistan, India and Pakistan?
See, right now it's very difficult because Pakistan has boxed itself into a corner. Imran Khan in August 2019 said, when they withdrew the High Commissioners, they stopped trade, that unless and until India walks back on the changes of 5th August 2019, we cannot have any conversation or trade or anything with India. Now, the Indian Supreme Court has also put its stamp of approval on those changes. India is not going to walk back. There is no wiggle room for Pakistani diplomats. How do they now come to negotiate or to talk? Aapki position ye ya to rescind karo na apni position. You have to say that is no longer a position. They don't know how to back out of that corner.
No, similar situation I was seeing with China as well, but we came to a conclusion recently. Not a conclusion, but some...
But there was never any statement. We had made a position clear that the boundary issue for us is of paramount importance.
Yeah.
That it cannot be business as usual so long as the boundary issue is not resolved. Trade was continuing. Trade had not been stopped from either side. Trade was continuing. But it was not a situation where what Pakistan had done to box itself in a corner. अब आज कैसे बात करेंगे वो? You have these odd statements coming out from different ministers that we should have trade with India. You stop the trade. Either you give a formal proposal, otherwise don't talk about it. They don't give a formal proposal.
Right.
Because they know that this statement continues to be their position.
Right. I would like to shift our conversation to China now. So Pakistan and China are close allies, always been, look like a, you know, brother and sister that won't leave each other. But recently we've been seeing some situations where a lot of Chinese diplomats or civilians have been killed in Pakistan. So why is that happening?
Not too many. There were 3 recently. Last 6 months there have been 2 attacks.
What do you see from this attack, sir?
You see, this is basically being done by the Baloch Liberation Army.
Okay.
Who have been warned by China that you're doing these projects in Balochistan, you haven't talked to us.
CPEC?
Yeah, on CPEC. That these projects are not beneficial to us. They're benefiting Punjab and Pakistan. We are losing jobs. And therefore, if you continue like this, you're going to be on a target.
Right.
So it's the targets of opportunity whenever they feel they have an opportunity. And China is insisting on Pakistan that you crack down on the freedom fighters, make sure they provide security. Now they are, slowly hinting that you let China deploy its own security forces for the inner cordon for the protection of the civil. So that's going to be a tough call for Pakistan. At one level, they can't refuse because China is bailing them out economically every year. If China insists that we want our own security people, because you can't protect them. If our people are dying and getting killed, kya kare? In a very unprecedented manner, recently last week, the Chinese ambassador in Islamabad, on 2 occasions, came out with statements on a public forum. Once in a briefing to journalists, once in a conference. He openly admonished Pakistan that you have to get your security act together because without this, there will be constraints on CPEC. And once he even exercised his right of reply, after the foreign minister spoke, and he said, no, we are taking care, security will be tightened, this and that, Ambassador got up again and replied to him and say that it is not so. We have concerns. So it shows that they are taking this issue very seriously. Naturally, if their nationals are being killed, anybody would get upset. But at the same time, I also feel that China is leveraging this violence against its citizens to squeeze Pakistan and get its own forces deployed in Pakistan or extract some other concession.
That's the best idea. So what is China's interest in Pakistan, if you want to...
No, the whole... See, CPEC is the flagship project of BRI.
BRI. Right? Which is at a halt right now, though.
Yeah, it's plateaued off. So even CPEC is plateaued off. Initially, the commitment was about $62 billion. They've invested about 22, 24 billion, not more than that. It's frozen.
Okay.
Because they know that Pakistan does not have the capacity to repay. Now, Chinese banks are making a noise, who had lent the money, that the projects were actually conceived in such a manner that the rate of return is about 22, 23%. So the electricity being produced is so expensive that people cannot afford to buy. It is beyond Pakistan's capacity to repay. So what do? So they have stopped further investment. They'll keep talking about it. CPEC phase 2, main line from Peshawar to Karachi, this and that. But actually on the ground, very little is happening. And China's interest is that through CPEC, they have entry into the...
Central Asia, Afghanistan and West Asia.
And the Arabian Sea and into the Indian Ocean. Yeah, through Gwadar. They have access over there, and gradually you will find that Gwadar itself will get turned into a port of call for Chinese ships and submarines. Where they can, like they have bases. It will not be a regular base, but certainly it will become a port of call.
That could be tricky for us also, sir.
Tricky for us, it will be tricky for the US Navy. It's tricky for all the world's oil containers coming out of the Persian Gulf have to transit very close to the Gwadar before they get into the Indian Ocean, then go to Japan and go to China. So that will come under watch.
So would you say that our partnership with at Chabahar port is to counter this kind of situation with China?
No,
and Pakistan?
not really. Actually, the motivation for Chabahar was to allow Afghanistan a separate access to the sea. From Chabahar,
Straight up.
you go up. So because today Afghanistan is choked by Pakistan because Karachi is the only port. They can import and export. So goods come to Karachi, then by road they go into Afghanistan. By Chabahar, they will get another port.
Yeah.
And not be dependent totally on
Pakistan. Join Afghanistan and then Central Asian countries. Yeah. So China is infamous for its debt trap across the world. A lot of African countries, Sri Lanka and so on. So do you think they do something similar with Pakistan?
They already have done it. Because so every year or so, Pakistan goes running to China to roll over their payments. If they have to pay $3 billion or $4 billion this year, they will say, "Is saal rehne do, agle saal badha denge," So China is gradually sucking them into this debt trap, which is, basically lending, predatory lending.
Right.
At, the low rate of interest.
6%.
Of power plants. The rate of return is about 20-22%. Unheard of. Where is Pakistan going to pay? And Pakistan thinks that China aa gaya, bas, we'll show India. We've got power plants, we've got beautiful roads and all that. But the cost is also there. You have to pay. This is not free lunch.
True.
There's no free lunches.
And not just from China, they have loans from the IMF, the US,
IMF is long-term, very low rate of interest. Prepayment about 20-30 years.
Okay.
1%, 0.5%, like that.
How about the Saudis, sir? Saudi bails out them as well.
Are deposits. Saudis so far have not invested. They are talking about investing in this Rekodek mine or setting up an oil refinery. Abhi tak nahi kiya, they're only in the talking stage.
So what kind of trade do we see in Pakistan, sir? There's a lot of export and imports happening in Pakistan?
You see, it's a consumption economy.
They consume more than they
consume much more than they produce, which means they need to import. And because of that, the current account deficit and the trade balance goes haywire. So they've squeezed imports.
Importing mostly from China, if I'm not wrong.
No, all over.
All over?
Yeah. So if you squeeze imports, then you don't have enough for your exports. You convert value add and you export, but taxes go down because you're not you're not paying customs duty.
Right.
So it has a cascading effect. Basically, Pakistan needs to produce more internally for consumption of its people. But all of them, they don't stop. They continue to buy these huge SUVs, for example, and other luxury items, because they're used to that lifestyle. They've been doing it for the last so many years, not realizing that they need to tighten their belt. That they haven't done. So, and their exports are not doing too well either. Because manufacturing is, you need to keep updating your manufacturing. Quality. Education standards are poor, so they don't have the kind of technical qualified people who can run those factories. This is what China said when they were doing the CPEC projects. A lot of labor came from China. They didn't want to hire Pakistani labor because it wasn't qualified enough. So they gave them, low-end jobs.
That's what they do. I've seen them doing that in Africa as well, China. So what kind of products or services do they export from Pakistan?
Rice is one, cotton, other agricultural produces, leather is another. Now they're exporting donkeys to China.
Donkeys?
200,000 donkeys a year. Because in some parts of China, donkey meat is supposed to be a delicacy.
Okay.
And donkey hides are supposed to be used in medicines. So this is going to become a big item for Pakistani exports.
No technology?
No technology.
None. I see. There's a lot of conflicts happening around the world right now. One in West Asia that we see. Iran is heavily involved. And I think Pakistan-Iran has a relationship that, could be sparked and triggered to the US as well, sir. Do you think Pakistan would ever come up on such conflict situations in West Asia?
To get involved?
Involved, sir.
Like how?
To just show support to the Muslim Brotherhood?
I don't think so that anybody would want Pakistan getting, or Pakistani themselves would want to be getting involved in, the West Asia. Because how do they get out of it? How do they extricate themselves from it? If it is part of a larger peacekeeping force, for example, a Muslim, Islamic peacekeeping, that's a different matter. And they can contributing to others. But to be lone rangers themselves and arrive in Gaza or something like that,
no,
don't see that happening.
We've seen Pakistan have a good relation with the US as well, once upon a time.
Periodically, yeah.
Is it still the case now, sir?
No. See, after the US left Afghanistan unceremoniously, the importance of Pakistan is reduced.
Okay.
Because earlier they needed Pakistan for these
True.
ground lines of communication. Their supplying of their troops went through Pakistan. Though Pakistan was playing a double game. They were supporting the Taliban, funding, rest and recreation, training, all that thing. And the US knew it. But they were also bound because they couldn't supply their troops in Afghanistan through the north or by air. So they had to use, come to Karachi port, then the containers would go into Afghanistan. So they needed Pakistan at that time. And Pakistan used this leverage. They made a lot of money out of it. But after August 21, this thing is no longer valid.
But now Pakistan sponsored Taliban, but now Taliban don't care about Pakistan at all.
Yeah.
Why is that the case, sir?
Pakistan miscalculated. They had three strategic objectives of the Taliban. The Taliban in Kabul will throw India out. Second, they will accept or recognize the Durand Line. And third, they will take care of the TTP, the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan. All these three assumptions have failed within a year. India is back in Kabul. Taliban want India to come and
quite famous in Afghanistan.
Come and complete the projects. They're even willing to send their army officers to continue to train in India. Taliban have said we will not recognize the Durand Line because it's a line that divides brothers. And many parts they've even uprooted the fence which Pakistan had constructed. And the TTP, they said we cannot deal with take care of the TTP because it was the TTP, the tribal tribes had helped the Taliban when the US attacked in 2001. They had taken shelter in FATA, the federally administered tribal area at that time. And the tribes had helped them. Now, when these tribes, men who are part of the TTP, need refuge and need security, the Taliban cannot say no because under, the Pashtuns have a word called Pashtun Wali, which is called the way of the Pashtun. As per that, they have to support the TTP, otherwise they'll be called Bagharat, which is somebody without honor, which is the worst insult for a Pashtun. So they are not going to take any action against the TTP. They've told Pakistan, we can facilitate your talks. It is your problem with the TTP, you solve it. We'll facilitate the talks, but don't expect us to take action against the TTP.
Afghanistan has backfired for them. Taliban has backfired for them at the
In a
moment.
very big way.
Can we shift our focus to Bangladesh now and understand Pakistan's role in ousting of Sheikh Hasina recently, 3 months ago?
I don't think that Pakistan had a direct role. Pakistan would fish in troubled waters. But, planning this, scheming this and all that, I don't think so Pakistan was really the prime mover of this.
You think it's the US?
Well, most people seem to that, and evidence seems to suggest that the US had some role in the planning of this. Putting Muhammad Yunus, man has no background in governance, but he was put over there. And there's also talk about that island which the US is interested in. So let's see how things pan out, but the experiment hasn't worked.
Do you think Pakistan can leverage the Bangladesh situation against India?
You see, first of all, Pakistan will have to apologize, for what they did in 71. The closest was Musharraf. He expressed regret, but that wasn't good enough. Unless and until they do that, it'll be difficult. Yes, they can do it at a covert level to a limited extent. But a large-scale thing, unless and until they express regret. And also by now, Bangladesh has developed quite differently than Pakistan.
True.
Though there is a undercurrent of radicalization in Bangladesh too.
Yes.
And strong anti-Hindu feelings too. But by and large, Bangladesh has developed, they see the fruits of economic development.
They have, but it's going back down again, so.
Actually, if they don't have electricity, for example. They haven't paid the electricity bills. And I think India has stopped or curtailed the electricity. And if you have kind of riots and law and order situation and all, then it becomes problematic. So Bangladesh is in danger of sliding back. But I don't see how Pakistan will be able to leverage that against India, except at a covert level, terrorists and things like that.
Anti-Hindu sentiment as well.
Yeah, but that doesn't directly affect Pakistan. They are taking care of their own Hindus. And the Bangladeshis are doing it. But I think unlike the Hindus in Pakistan, they're very limited and few and far between. I think the Hindus in Bangladesh are much more. They're not organized. They may not find it that easy.
I see.
Of course, there have been a lot of atrocities. Every day, in the temples, people being killed, women being raped, people being converted. That is happening. But on the other hand, you also see the Hindus have come out to protest in large numbers. And those are massive numbers. So it's a wait and watch kind of a situation.
What role can India make to safeguard the Hindus in Bangladesh, sir?
You see, it's a very difficult situation for the government. You cannot directly intervene.
I see.
You can build international opinion.
You can apply pressure to the government.
Yeah. And back channel, other kind of thing. And you can build international opinion, which is, I think, what we've been doing. Trump, as a candidate, has come out very strong statement on what is happening to the Hindus in Bangladesh. So like this, whether the Human Rights Commission, whether it's in the UN, you build pressure on the government in Bangladesh.
Right. Coming back to the internal problems in Pakistan. So we spoke about the leadership, problem of leadership, but what other problems would you say are the biggest problem in Pakistan, sir?
Leadership, I think, is one of the biggest problems because they don't have the leadership which has the vision of how to extricate Pakistan from the mess it is in. And then the courage to take those measures. And so I'll give you an example. Today, people are focused just on Imran Khan, what's happening in politics, survival. But the deeper issues which I mentioned in my book, water, education, economy, population is growing at over 2.55%, highest growth rate in South Asia. They are in danger of becoming an absolute water scarce country. Nobody is looking at those. Those are issues which require long-term planning and long-term investment. Nobody is looking at that. So I think this paucity of leadership is one of the major issues. Then there is confrontation between the political class and the judiciary. They want to curtail the powers of the judiciary.
Is it?
Recently, when they passed the 26th Amendment, it was first they wanted to set up a separate constitutional court that will really be above the Supreme Court itself to listen to all constitutional cases. But there was some opposition, so now they're going to have constitutional benches. So again, tampering with the judiciary. And then yesterday, they passed a series of bills in which they've increased the strength of the Supreme Court judges from 17 to 34. So they can appoint pliant judges to the Supreme Court. Similarly, the Army, Air Force and Navy chiefs, the tenures were for 3 years, they've extended it to 5 years. So General Asim Munir now will have a 5-year tenure. Instead of retiring in 2025, next year November, he will now retire in 27, which gives him a longer tenure. Again, strengthening the role of the army.
I see.
Then there is a security issue. The TTP is on a rampage, so is the Baloch, BLA. According to a Pakistani think tank, in the first 9 months of the year, 2024, there were over 1,500 casualties, fatalities, which means 170 people being killed through terrorist action every month after month for 9 months. Now, for a country of the size of Pakistan, that's a huge amount of people being killed in terrorist action. And they seem to be doing nothing about it, or unable to do anything about it in the army, both in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa as well also in Balochistan. So these are the other problems that they have. So, you have leadership, you have, and then of course there's Imran Khan. Nobody knows what to do with Imran Khan because he doesn't want to strike a deal.
With the army?
Yeah, because I think he's been told, messages have been sent to him, that we can send you out of jail, but you don't destabilize the system. Don't go into a million man march, or don't go into dharnas and things like that. Bide your time. When next elections are held, we'll have an opportunity. We'll make sure that it's a level playing field or something like that.
Okay.
He refuses to do a deal. So they don't know what to do with how to tackle Imran Khan.
What's his agenda?
He wants to be Prime Minister.
Okay.
He said, you've stolen the election from me. I want to parachute from the jail to the Prime Minister's house. His agenda is very clear. This is what he wants. So, these are the various internal problems and issues. But these are immediate problems. As I mentioned, the major issues
is the education, water, sanitation.
You see, for example, you take education. 50% of school children who should be in primary schools are out of schools. The rest who go to primary school drop out. I think 50% boys and about 60% girls. So if you go up the chain to secondary schools, to higher schools, to universities, the number becomes progressively very small. And in a technological world, what do you do? Your people are not being educated. And even the quality of education which is being imparted is very poor. A lot of people have written about this. It's very poor quality of education. There's very little focus on science and technology.
Right.
And many children, a lot of the kids are going to madrasas, where it's a different kind of education. The jihad and shahadat and, things like that. This is a hugely serious problem. Then I mentioned water, population. This is growing, at this phenomenal rate. And today, Pakistan's agriculture is barely able to sustain population of 240 million. When the population becomes 300 million, can you imagine? Water is scarce, they won't be able to grow crops. They'll have to import.
There's been inflation for the longest time in Pakistan as well.
But, importing of food, importing meat, which is not cheap now. After Ukraine war, prices have gone up everywhere.
True.
So these are the multifarious problems. Nobody's paying attention.
So if you had the power to improve the situation in Pakistan, what would be your step-by-step agendas? You've been speaking about it loosely, but what would you do if you had the power to...
I'd run away. I think Pakistan reached a tipping point some time ago. It'll be very, very difficult. It has to be a sustained effort without interference from politicians, opposition, to pull back the situation. And that can happen only if the government is free to invest long term.
Which is difficult because there's so much debt already.
Yeah. So unless and until they invest in education, in health, in infrastructure, in water,
technology,
there is no long term solution. Right now they're on ventilator. IMF comes and given them a loan for 7 billion. That also you watch. In November, the IMF team is coming for the first quarterly review. These are the conditions which were laid down. Has Pakistan met those conditions or not? They haven't. Because the parameters which the IMF had given, main thing was that the FBR, the Federal Bureau of Revenue, will collect so much of taxes. There's a huge shortfall in the collection of taxes. So the starting point so either the IMF will give them a waiver, or they'll have to renegotiate and impose more taxes. And these are all indirect taxes. The real fuel prices. They'll raise gas prices, electricity, which ultimately the poor suffers. IMF had told them put taxes on agriculture, on retail, on construction. No taxes on that. So, where do you start? I don't want that kind of power anyway. What you were saying. So the people who are there, it's not that they don't know what to do. There are some brilliant economists There are some people who know what is the problem and what to do. उनकी कोई सुनवाई नहीं है ना. Nobody wants to give up their perks and privileges.
Right. It sounds like a very problematic situation in Pakistan, sir.
It is.
And you said they're on a ventilator right now. Yeah. If no one is giving them any financial aid, what would happen to the state, sir? What do you speculate could happen?
No, ultimately, if things go from bad to worse, they'll default. Sovereign default, which means they will not be able to import very easily. They will banks will require bank guarantees. Mm-hmm. Trade will shrink. Mm-hmm. And the prices then will go up even more.
Then there will be civil unrest?
Yeah, there will be civil unrest.
And then, sir? What is the next step after the civil unrest?
So it depends. You see, so far in Pakistan, there has not been a civil unrest on economic issues. Civil unrest has been political. Against Ayub Khan, against Zia, the lawyers' march against Musharraf. However bad the economic situation has been, abhi tak nahi hua civil unrest. And I think there's reasons for that. See, apart from the formal economy, Pakistan is a very large informal economy. And they have support system of the biradris in the rural areas.
Okay.
Even in the urban areas, you see each house, the rich guys will have about 10, 12 servants who are staying with them. They pay them, they eat there and all that, and they send money back. The biradris in the village, somebody's working on somebody's farm. And that will continue. He looks after them. And for these, that's why there has been no... But if a situation comes... Today, even now in the urban areas, people have said on television interviews, these television journalists go around asking them, they say either we can pay electricity bill or educate our children. We can't do both. So if the things continue to deteriorate in this manner, when the prices keep continuing to going up, the number of people who are going out of Pakistan,
the riches,
the doctors, young people who don't see a future for themselves in Pakistan, either they go illegally. You would have read about that boat off the coast of Greece that sank and 300 Pakistanis drowned. Or they find some other, they walk across through Iran and into Europe or into Mexico and then try and get into the US. So a lot of people have left and desperately trying to get visas because they don't see a future for themselves in Pakistan. That's one indicator of where people... Recently there was a survey by a Paris-based consumer company called Ipsos, and 89% of the people felt that the direction of Pakistan was just not good.
There has to be some light at the end of the tunnel, sir. There was recently speculations about some oil reserves that were found, the world's largest oil reserves in the world, in Pakistan.
After announcing them, there will be no further news about it, where they are, how many they are, has anybody surveyed them? Nothing. One short news and
that's it.
Earlier also, when Imran Khan was there, he said massive reserves have been found. Nothing.
Very insightful conversation of Pakistan today, sir. Learned so much from you, sir. Like always lovely interacting with you. Before I go, I ask my guests 3 personal questions, if you allow me, sir.
Sure. Depends what they are.
You can say no if you don't want to, sir. One is, if there was one problem in the world that Mr. Tilak Devasher could solve, what would that be?
I've always believed that women's education is one issue, which if we could get a handle around women's education and educate all the women, it'll be a much better world.
No disparity between the masculine and
I think women
are
far more sensible than men.
Definitely.
And, they are able to manage households, they're able to manage economies, they're able to manage people much better, and women are far more focused. A guy is thinking 10 different things. He thinks he can multitask, but he has a problem.
True.
Women are far more focused. So I think women's education is... you can't deprive 50% of the population from the fruits of education.
True. Do you think that's changing now in today's time?
Not for countries like Afghanistan, where women are not allowed education at all.
True.
But in a lot of other places, India, for example, is doing a lot for education, women's education. So that is one issue, I think, that comes to mind straight away. I mean, if I think more, maybe I'll come up with others. But
Definitely, sir. Second question I want to ask you is, what piece of advice would you give to your younger self, someone who's in your position at the moment, sir? Your 18-year-old self.
I'll tell myself, stop being an ass.
See,
when you're young, you're stupid. Right? You don't think beyond the next... In school, you're always hungry. You couldn't think beyond the next meal.
True.
18, it was not very different either. That you couldn't think beyond the next meal. And if I were to, hypothetically, I would then plan 30 or 40 years ahead. You did your education, you did your masters, you wrote the exam, you joined the civil service, got married, you had children. It was event based. It wasn't a planned thing that, look, where do you want to be when you're 60?
I see.
Where do you want to be when you're 50?
That has its own charm as well, serendipity. Don't you think? You've done great with your life anyway, sir.
But I would rather have if it was planned.
You would tell yourself to plan your life in accordance to what you want at that point of time.
Yeah.
Beautiful, sir. Last question for the day, sir, for you is that because this podcast is called Diary for Publisher, I make sure to ask my guests about some books. I'm going to be putting on in description below about all the books that you have written, the latest one being Pashtuns. But if there was one book that you wish you would have read earlier in life that changed your perspective on life, not just, could be Pakistan, could be life, could be something your interest, could be religion, what would that book be, sir?
It's very difficult to answer offhand. If I've read earlier or a book that I've liked?
A book that you wish that ये तो पहले पढ़नी चाहिए थी. ये तो मैं 20 साल पहले पढ़ता तो I would have changed the course of my decision making in life.
I can't come up with an answer.
No one?
Yeah. There are many books that I've really liked a lot. And I've read them
multiple times.
Yeah. For example, Jonathan Livingston Seagull.
Okay.
How Green Was My Valley.
How Green Is My Barrel.
How Green Was My Valley.
Valley. Okay.
Yeah.
Is it Pakistan related?
No. It's about coal miners and The Little Prince. These are the books I've really enjoyed and, sort of influenced me.
What is the connect with these books? What do they do?
Nothing to do with Pakistan.
Nothing to do with Pakistan. Yeah. Just life. Beautiful, sir. This has been a lovely conversation. Very insightful, inspiring. Lots to learn from you. I'm sure the audience took a lot of takeaways as well, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you for calling me. Nice talking to you, Shivam. Wish
Likewise,
you all the
sir.
best.
Thank you very much. We at TOAP are working really hard to take this podcast to the next level. Our guests are going to get even better. Our production quality is going to get even better. And hopefully, I'm going to get even better too. Most importantly, we are committed to being consistent and continue to do what we love the most. Until then, keep reimagining yourself and know that the power of change lies within you. Jai Hind.